So we welcome you back to the Barber Biz Podcast. I'm Dan Brown, your host, and today we have a special guest. We really were thinking outside the box a little bit with this one. Damon M. Scott, a consultant, even when it comes to being an instructor, a professor in college, law services as well. So we were really greatly appreciative of him being able to sit down with us. A really informative interview, and we know that you'll definitely enjoy it. All right, so we're back on our podcast here, the Barber Biz Podcast, and we're here with a man who has been associated with Western Michigan University Law School, Indiana University, and I was saying earlier on, telling him how I'm actually a Michigan fan, so I'm not a big fan of Indiana, but it's okay.
Well, your team is still in the tournament. So.
Yeah, of course. Y'all didn't even make
even after playing, we got drugged in the NIT, but that's another story.
Yeah, Coach got fired too, but we'll get back to that.
We'll get back to that. They had a plane crash. They're still in it. They got a wind at their back. That's good. It's a beautiful thing. They won by 20 points in their warm-ups. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. I also mentioned DePaul University, and then you said pause. You had to clarify that. DePaul University
in Chicago.
Okay.
Not the DePaul with a W in Indiana,
okay.
But the St. Vincent DePaul in Chicago.
Okay. Master of Science in Accounting there.
Mm-hmm.
Bachelor of Arts in Afro-American Studies at Indiana.
Correct.
In terms of your teaching, Perimeter College.
Georgia State Perimeter College, started there about 2 years ago.
Okay. Atlanta Technical College as an accounting instructor. A couple other names that you may have heard of: Merrill Lynch and J.P. Morgan Chase.
Yeah, those were my banking days in middle market banking and small business banking. So yeah, you do a lot of risk management analysis there.
Mr. Damon Scott, we appreciate you. We appreciate your time.
Well, I appreciate being here.
And we had already started talking before, and there were so many different parts. We left off before we actually started recording about relationships and reputation, and in business, why that's so important. You were telling me as we were just talking, you get so excited about some of these topics, you have to slow down a little bit.
Yeah, indeed.
So I'm going to say, okay, we're going to start that little portion again, and you can tell me why relationships and reputation in business are so important.
Well, first of all, character and reputation, like anything extremely valuable, is better kept than recovered. So you want to make sure that you guard your reputation with like your life, because in a professional service, it is your life. You get you could spend 30 years building a great reputation. Do one thing to mess it up and it's gone forever. So you want to guard your reputation with your life, number one. Number two, the way you guard your reputation in your craft is to have integrity and to do outstanding work consistently over a very long period of time. If you do that, then your customers will find you. And literally, because if you tell your customers, I'm good at this, nobody's going to listen. If your customers tell other customers, he's great at this, everybody's going to be the path to your doorway, because it's not what you say, it's what the market is saying about you. And so you want to make sure to keep that integrity, keep those skills up, be honorable, and guard that reputation with your life.
Interesting. Now at J.P. Morgan Chase, it seems as though you had a few different roles, but one in particular was small business relationship manager.
Absolutely.
So expound on that for us, exactly what that entails.
When you're dealing with small business relationship management, what you're dealing with is anybody who needs a loan, let's say from maybe $20,000 to $50,000 all the way up to maybe $500,000. Once you cross the $500,000 line, the way that loans are underwritten changes. If you're applying for a loan as a small business person, and we could call this part of the interview the commercial finance part.
Okay.
Because this is just commercial finance 101. If you're applying for a loan that is under $500,000, then what's going to happen is that they're going to take a look at your credit score, and they're going to look at your cash flow, and make a decision about whether they're going to loan you the money. If you want a loan that is in excess of $500,000, you have to go through what are known as the 4 C's of commercial underwriting, which is cash flow, collateral, continuity, and character. Cash flow is how much genuine cash does this business generate? Okay. Like on a month-to-month, day-to-day, year-to-year basis. That's number one. They're going to take a look at that. And what they want to see is that your cash flow is exceeding all of your obligations plus this new loan by 1.25 times or 1.5 times sometimes at the most. Okay. Continuity. They want to see that if you're talking about middle market banking or small business banking, they want to see that you've been in business for sometimes 2 to 4 years, 3 to 5 years. And what they want to see that is that they want to see what kind of experience you got. How have you dealt with different business cycles? Bankers know that you as an entrepreneur are going to hit some tough times. Mm-hmm. And so as a consequence, bankers are much more interested in loaning money to entrepreneurs who have lost and who have come back than entrepreneurs who have amazing, wonderful, great ideas, but this is their first time out. Because the question is not, the question is not, whether something's going to happen. It's coming. That's why we underwrite these loans. This is why we do risk analysis. Whatever that defaulting consequence is or occurrence is, it's going to happen. The question is, what are you going to do when it happens? Those people who are coming back, those are the people who tried it, failed, got back up, and are trying again. And that's what we want you to be able to do.
Okay. So it's interesting because the passion in which you talk about these different factors when it comes to being able to analyze a loan for a business. Mm-hmm. It seems as though, or I know from having seen you in action, that you had the same passion when you're in your classroom talking about some different subjects.
A discovery process for me is a discovery process, no matter what it is. If it's talking to students about investing or if it's talking to anybody about banking. I mean, I'm an educator. I'm in that nerd space. You know what I mean? So if I'm in that world of ideas and I get the best part of any problem for me is a chance to just sit and think about it. So I can get excited about all of this stuff, but I spent years doing that stuff though. So yeah.
So how is it that you explain to your students why the importance of a budget is so important? Because you have kind of like both sides, where it's business and the money side. Well, both is money, but accountant and business. You've kind of seen it on both sides. Mm-hmm. You've seen the credit side. Yeah. Because you also had with Merrill Lynch, you were a credit relationship manager, mm-hmm. which we briefly spoke about earlier. So when you're dealing with your students, mm-hmm. or even like when you deal with somebody who wants to, or you advise somebody who's going to open up a business, mm-hmm. why is it having the proper budget to even try to get a loan or to open that business is of such great importance?
Because it shows the banker that you are making informed decisions. You are making data-driven decisions. If you come in like most people do, Gordon Gekko or Michael Douglas at the end of Wall Street or in the middle of Wall Street, he says, I look at 100 deals a day and I choose one. That's most bankers, because people send them business plans where they got these great ideas and these hockey stick financials that are just going through the roof. Mm. But the fact remains is that if you got a budget in place, now I can see that you're approaching this like the engineers approach it. The engineers say what gets measured gets done. Okay, if you can start to write things down and see what cash flows are coming in and then measure what's going out, now you have enough data. If you're diligent enough to do that part, you have enough data to go, okay, this is where I need to tweak my operation to begin to be becoming profitable on a consistent basis, so that when the bankers begin to ask you things that you didn't anticipate, you can use the data to address those issues. If you don't have a budget, you're like a pilot who's flying without instruments. You're talking about what you want to happen, but you don't have any data of a roadmap of how you're actually going to make it happen. It's like having a goal without a plan. It's just a wish. Mm-hmm. It's not a plan. That budget shows me that you're taking your business serious enough that you're measuring every single thing that comes in, goes out, and that you're doing business, what I like to say, intentionally.
So what would you suggest then for somebody who says, okay, well, I want to open a business. I've never opened one before. I want to open up a barbershop. I want to open up a salon. What steps should they take in terms of being able to legitimately walk into a bank, credit union, whatever it is, to be able to get a loan to open up a shop?
What I would do is, let me see there's a business plan software out there. A gentleman who went to Stanford, so I can't think of his name, but there's several business plan softwares out there that will help you to walk through creating a business plan step by step. But you want to make sure to have an executive summary. If that software does not offer you an opportunity to make an executive summary, then you can forget it, because bankers are a lot like record producers. They'll get the tracks in, but they're going to listen to 2 to 3 seconds of it. And if it doesn't catch their eye or their ear in that amount of time, they're going to go to the next one. That executive summary needs to tell me what the idea is, how scalable it is, and how you built an organization around this concept in order to take advantage of that scalability in 3-4 sentences. Period. And if you can't do that, then at issue is whether you really know your business well enough. I saw a lady who said that she actually won a business plan contest, and she said she wanted to be the Uber of the hair salon business. What she wanted to do was create an app where people can now call in and say they need a mobile barber or a mobile stylist, and then they just send them out.
Okay.
She ended up winning because her idea was incredibly scalable. That could happen all the way around the world at any point in time. But she fundamentally did not understand that at that point, she was no longer a stylist. Her company was no longer a hairstyling professional service salon. She owned a technology company at that point, and she didn't get that.
Yeah.
And they had to educate her on that. But it just so happens that her idea was so scalable that they could teach her that and still make money.
That's an excellent idea, because as you said, I believe that's what you're referring to when it says scalable. To where it's not short-sighted. There's a lot of levels to it.
As a banker, that's what I'm looking for. How scalable is this idea? Like, are you trying to serve like some type of food where everybody has a mouth? So okay, but it's not it's hard to patent it.
How is it that you can show scalability if I'm just going to open a barbershop though? So scale it down a little bit.
So if you're going to just open a barbershop and you want a small business loan, that loan is going to be a lot more dependent on cash flow and possibly even collateral.
Okay.
It's going to be a lot more bankable if you either own that location, or if you're going in to get like a home equity line, or you have some equity in your home that you can use as collateral for your business loan. Okay. Because, and again, you got the cash flow. We talked about the 4 C's: cash, collateral, continuity, and character. You got the cash flow and you got the character, or the collateral. Now we're getting closer to being able to bank this business. Barbershops in and of themselves are not necessarily that scalable. Like the iPhone is scalable around the world. Everybody's going to use it because it's just limited to the location that barber's reputation is growing in.
Yeah.
But as long as you have the cash flow, if you have some collateral to put up, that's going to increase the likelihood. In that case, if we're talking about a collateral, we're talking about a barbershop. Are we talking about under $500,000 here for this loan?
Probably so.
If we're talking about that, then we're talking about your character now. Now we're talking about credit score. It's incredibly important to, as best you can, keep that credit score as high as possible.
So in a sense, the character to credit score part of it really kind of work hand in hand then.
They are one and the same, because character for loans that are below $500,000 is all in your credit score. How do you pay your bills?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you meet the obligations that you entered into voluntarily? Now, for those loans that are in excess of $500,000 into the $1 million range loans, character has maybe a minor part to do with it, and it's more your general reputation among other people in the industry.
Yeah.
okay, that has to do business with you. And then that deal is going to be heavily dependent on cash flow. If you want a loan in excess of $2-3 million, you're going to have to show some serious cash flow.
Yeah. So speak on the different types of ownership for businesses, because I know we briefly spoke about this over lunch earlier about how some people, there's just different types of ownership, whether it's a partnership or and so forth. So speak on some of the different options that there are.
Well, what's important to keep in mind is there are different forms of doing business, and there are benefits and risks associated with each one. The first one would be a proprietorship. Proprietorship is you just go and tell the business or the county that you're going to be doing business as, let's say if I'm Damon Scott doing business as Scott Capital Consulting, I haven't incorporated, I don't have any partners. I just went and decided to do business. But here's the upside and the downside to being a proprietor. The upside is that there's only single taxation. You only tax once. Whenever I make money or whenever the business makes money, I'm making money because I have to put them on line 21 of my 1040, which is that line 21 on the 1040 is other income. And that's usually where small business people put their business income.
Okay.
That's the upside. I mean, when there's only single taxation, when the business make money, I'm making money, and I don't have to pay taxes twice for it, which when I get to corporations, that's going to make sense. Now, the downside of it is that if as a proprietor, I'm exposed to unlimited liability. So now, because I haven't incorporated, there's no difference between me and the business. In fact, the only tax ID the business really has is my social security number. And so when the business injures somebody, they can sue the business and take all the business assets. If the business doesn't have any assets, then the barber, the stylist, you can end up losing your house, your car, and your dog. Okay. So assume for a moment that that Andis Clippers, let's assume this is a products liability issue. Andis Clippers is produced with some type of metal that's giving people some type of rash. Okay. That's now a flesh-eating bacteria rash.
Okay.
Well, not only is the barber going to get sued, but Andis Clippers is going to get sued. Okay. And so if you're a proprietorship, they're going to win that lawsuit. And it's going to cost you, even if they don't win it, it's just going to cost you just to even get out of it. Okay, this is not about right or wrong. Okay, so if you want to go that route and be a proprietor, you got great tax benefits, poor liability risk associated with doing that. You could lose your house, your car, and your dog. And so if they get a judgment against you and your proprietorship does not have enough assets to satisfy that judgment, then they come to start liquidating your personal assets unless you end up having to file bankruptcy.
Okay.
That's a proprietorship. You move up the chain a little bit when you go to a partnership. Partnership, again, the benefit is there's single taxation. You're only taxed once. And you can split the risk with other people. You split the burden of management. You split the burden of administrative work. You split the burden of revenue generation with somebody else. You also split the profits and everything else. The downside is the same as the proprietorship. You are exposed to unlimited liability, not only for what you do, but for what you and any of your partners do. You all are what are known as jointly and severally liable for any person that's injured in the business. So let's assume you do A1 work, outstanding work with your client. But then when your client is on the way out of the door after they just gave you like a $50 tip or something, they're on the way out of the door, they slip and fall in your barbershop. Now you have a premises liability issue. Okay, and so now you and your partners, if this person broke their legs, they get, transported to the hospital. That ambulance ride, that's $800 right there. A couple days in the hospital. Now they're coming to sue you. If you're a partnership, your personal liability, your personal assets are at risk. So again, the upside, you only get taxed once. Partners have to report all of their income on what is known as a Schedule K. They attach it to the 1040. Okay, and so when their business makes money, they make money. They don't have to pay taxes on it twice, but they're also exposed to unlimited limited liability and can end up losing their house, their car, and their dog. Now, if you decide to do a corporation, incorporation, limited corporation, so on and so forth, now you have to go down to the corporations, you have to go down to the Secretary of State, Corporations Division, and fill out articles of incorporation to incorporate your business. That business now becomes a citizen of whatever state it's incorporated in.
Okay.
So a domestic corporation is one that's incorporated here in Georgia. That corporation is like another citizen. It can do everything you can do except vote. It can own property in its own name. It can sue people. It can be sued. However, it has to have its own EIN, its own tax ID.
Okay.
And that leads to the downside of a corporation is that when that corporation makes money, it is going to be taxed. And then when you as the owner of the corporation try to take money out of your business, you're going to be taxed on that too. And so as a corporation, now you're exposed to double taxation. The upside is that you now have limited liability as long as the company, huge asterisk here, as long as the company is properly capitalized, meaning that you have enough money in the bank to deal with debts and things like that, then you can keep your limited liability status. And so if the company is sued somehow or another, referring back to our Andis Clipper hypothetical situation, if they get a $3 million judgment against you, but there's only $40,000 in assets in the business, and they have to take the $40,000, and your liability is limited to your investment in the business, and that's it. And they can't take your house, your car, and your dog. So for a corporation, the downside is double taxation. The upside is limited liability. The solution to all of that is to do a limited liability corporation. A limited liability corporation, you only tax once like a partnership, but you also have limited liability.
So you're saying from the jump, that's the best way to do it?
That's the best way to go. That is the best way to go.
Because the majority of the time, I think that because so many barbers and stylists are used to just cash flow, it seems as though they basically end up getting into a sole proprietorship, maybe even a partnership, where it's just based off of how much money they have in the bank or in the shoebox.
Correct.
So it's not as if they're getting a lot of those benefits of having the proper EIN number,
right?
All those other different things.
But see, an issue is this: there is an extraordinary amount, and this is probably one of my favorite words from my past professional career. There's an extraordinary amount of risk associated with providing those professional services to people, like cutting their hair as a barber, doing their hair as a stylist. Because let's just take a look at this one issue: property law. The minute you invite somebody into your business to transact business, that person is now classified under Georgia law, or just about most laws throughout the 50 states. That person is classified as a invitee. That means that you have a duty to that person not only to inspect the grounds for dangers that are known and possibly even unknown, but you also have a duty to remedy those issues. So if somebody comes on the land or on the business property that was not invited, that person may very well be a trespasser.
Okay.
You have a different legal obligation to that person. And mind you, these are risks and obligations that you're exposing yourself to just by opening up a shop. That literally, this stuff is stuff that you have to deal with and applies to you whether you've been doing it 30 years and you know it or not. Because some people can do it 30 years and they don't have any issues, no problems. Somebody comes on as a licensee, they're there to do something specific like check the water meter or something like that. There's a different legal duty owed to that person. And so you want to incorporate to protect yourself from liability exposing from issues that you probably never even knew about.
Yeah.
And probably it's not practicable for you to even have to look into all of that stuff. I know these things because, I have a law degree. But why would a barber need to know all of that stuff? The only thing you need to know is make sure to keep your premises where they can be they're up to code to serve people professionally, and make sure to keep places nice and neat and clean and free of obstructions, and you should be fine. Yeah. But you also want to be able to have these discussions with a lawyer, so you want to be able to do what I talked about earlier, is to do business intentionally. Don't go through it like, well, I'm just lucky.
Yeah.
No, you want to be good rather than lucky, because fundamentally sound is going to be highly talented without fundamentals any day. It's like the same. It's like what you said to me once. The barber who waits on the door doesn't eat. Okay, that's just relying on your talent, your reputation. But if you want to do business intentionally, you'll begin to take appointments. You begin to put some forethought into it, some planning. Okay, plan it out. Plan your success.
So, I'd like you to leave us with something. Now, we're required a lot of times as educators, instructors, to provide a quote for the day, a quote for the week, or something like that. Just kind of start the week out with.
Mm-hmm.
Leave us with a thought to be able to inspire and motivate all the different business owners, some of the barber students, some of the cosmetology students, some of the different people that are in our industry. Something to motivate them.
Something to motivate them? Oh, gosh.
I don't put you on the spot, but I know you can handle it.
Well, what I will say is this. With some discipline, you can solve some problems. But with total discipline, you can pretty much solve all problems. In the book M. Scott Peck wrote called The Road Less Traveled, he asked the question, is it ever possible to live free of emotional pain in this world? And he answered that by saying yes and no. On the one hand, yes, it's possible to live free of emotional pain because discipline leads to mastery. And so the things that frustrated us when we were much younger, those things we can just kind of laugh at them now. Even the things that frustrated us when we began our business, 5 years, 10 years into our business, we can just kind of laugh at those things now. So when you see younger people struggling with things, even new business owners struggling with things, you can kind of sit them down and just kind of walk them through it little bit by little bit, almost like you would like your niece or nephew, just to say, okay, hold on. First make your loop. Then you want to bring the string around and kind of pull it through, while they may be very frustrated with that. So discipline is going to lead to mastery. So the answer is yes, it is possible to live this world without emotional pain. The other side of it is no, it's not possible to live this life without emotional pain. Because being a master at anything is going to lead to you being highly skilled. And when you're highly skilled, you're going to be called on to serve the world. And in your love, you're going to answer the call. So with that skill, you're going to be exposed to lots of different problems that you never could have thought that you would be called on to serve. Please believe it that I remember losing one of my buddies, Muhammad. Good brother, died really early, but he was a barber. But when he passed away, it just dawned on me that most of the major challenges that I had gotten over because he told me that I could do it when I was sitting in his chair. And somehow or another, getting out of his chair, I just felt like I could just do anything in the world. Plus, you just look like $1 million. So what I would encourage all of your listeners to consider is the profound impact that barbers and stylists have on their clients when the client comes to place themselves in their chair, they're almost like a piece of clay. And you're not only doing their hair, but you're actually molding a bit of their mentality, perspective, and maybe even their spirit for that moment. You're definitely having an impact on what they believe they can or cannot do. And in this way, you are being called on to serve the world. And I'm sure in your love for what you do, you answer the call.
Well, we appreciate it, David. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, man. It's an absolute pleasure. Anything I can do to help, absolutely, I'm honored to be asked.
Appreciate it.